myself. It makes me self-conscious about the emails that I send.
Yeah, emails it's become the bane of my life in so many ways. The ones I receive, they're so long-winded that I just end up phasing out and just
The clutter.
There, that's another one. Unbelievable. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome to another one of our live streams. My name is Gareth Wax of many purple hats, and of course I have with me the incomparable, the inimitable, the incandescent David Chernick. Today we're talking about the bane of everyone's life, which of course is email. I remember a time when there was so much shit coming through. Yes, I said the S word, coming through letterboxes, physical letterboxes. You could almost put a waste bin underneath it and just collect the rubbish that way. Then, of course, email became the thing, and people started filling that up with the equivalent. And now you've got a mixture of terribly written emails, often take far too long to get to the point. Often their subject line doesn't do it justice. Terrible. And also on top of that, in between all that, you've got the junk mail and the rubbish as well. What's to do, David?
Well, I love it when marketing people ruin something. The latest tech.
He's on this. He loves banging the drum. Marketing people ruin everything.
Yeah, I do like saying that, because one of the reasons I actually quite appreciate marketing people ruining stuff is because it gives an opportunity for people who do it well to really shine. I mean, the same happens. We've talked recently about presentations. Almost all presentations are boring, right? So if you do a great presentation, it really stands head and shoulders above everybody else. And the same goes with emails. And I'm not talking here about your spammy lead generation emails. I'm talking about emails that you've been having with somebody who's in your pipeline, a qualified opportunity, somebody you're trying to help coach move through the pipeline and close them down. And so by the time that happens, you've usually got a very long chain of emails, and nobody really scrolls down to the bottom. Why? Because it's so full of junk. And,
right.
It's just, it doesn't tell any kind of story, because nobody's going to scroll down it. You scroll through it and you've got a dozen signatures that are that long, with all of the the long bit of text afterwards with the disclaimers and contact details repeated a million times and backwards and forwards and twos and froings. And actually, the story of this development of your sale is probably encapsulated within that email, but in tiny little nuggets. And so when I go and see a client, and I very often I want to get hands-on with them, when they say to me things like, oh, they've not replied to my close email, or is it too soon to start chasing? I'll say, well, bring up your email. Let's see what the last thing was that you were saying. And I'm scrolling pages and pages of just junk, really.
Right.
So what I try and get people to do is sort of it's like a can of worms, really. I start by getting them to clean up that email story, to go right to the beginning of the emails, to find that first email, which might have been your cold email of introduction, or it might have been their inquiry, their initial inquiry, and make sure that first email is formatted correctly, so it's very clear what the first contact was, and then scroll up bit by bit, deleting all of the really long superfluous bits of signature with disclaimers that have already been posted at the bottom, and just make sure that it is telling that story. There might have been other people included in those emails at times. I saw one the other day where they'd included procurement, the finance people, HR, a few other people sort of had their 2 cents worth of input into that conversation, so that by the time you get to the top email, the last email that you sent, it's a very clear story of where we've got to so far. And why that's important is because, a little bit like a proposal, it's an encapsulation, or should be an encapsulation, of all of their problems and the issues and what they saw as their solutions, and all of that kind of stuff. The email tells that as a story, and it helps, I think, with the salesperson themselves really understand how they've got to that point. Now, when I said it was a can of worms, because a whole load of stuff comes into that, it can prompt people to realize that their email signature is absolutely awful.
Most email signatures are absolutely.
Well, I put a lot of stock in keeping things really tidy and being precious about every pixel that you're sending to somebody. If you want them to read an email, make them easy to understand.
Also, get to the flipping point.
Oh, yeah.
It's, oh my giddy aunt. All this, I hope you aren't, I hope so, I'm so sorry, and blah, blah. Stop that. Stop all the nonsense. Oh,
Well, I only really started thinking about that when we started reading emails on mobile phones.
yes.
And I realized, and this was, I sort of took me back to many years ago, probably 20 years ago, where the user experience Bible was written. Don't make me think. I don't know if you remember that.
No, not at all.
People
But I'll
started
take your
using
word
that
for
to
it.
help them create websites back in the day. Don't make me think. And we started looking at all sorts of visual communication, and I started looking at emails. And these days a lot of people are screening their emails. Supposedly, depending on what data you read, 60% of business emails are screened on a mobile phone first.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we want to be designing emails for mobile, and assuming people have their emails set to factory settings, the things, just that what's going to make them decide whether or not to open the email in amongst all of the other chaff.
Subject
line. Well, before that, who it's from.
Oh,
who
right.
it's from.
Okay.
They're going to if they recognize your name, they're more likely to answer it.
Yeah. So all these. Do you know what I hate? Is when the email comes through and it's not from a person; it's from a company. I'm not interested really in that. I want to. My connections on email, on LinkedIn, on any of these locations is person to person, and so
Correct.
I want that sort of
You want a
attention.
human. You want an email from a human.
Yeah.
The second thing, as you pointed out, is the subject line. Now,
Oh my
again,
God.
assuming you've got your phone set up onto factory settings, you've got about 40 characters before it starts going ... and it's truncated. So use those 40 characters. Make those 40 characters tell them exactly what they're going to find in the email, or the call to action, or the value
Without
proposition.
sounding like you're trying to sell them something.
Always.
The worst thing you can do is you can say special offer or discount inside. Or
I don't know. But look, there's actually a lot of data on what subject lines are good. You can look at a lot of the email companies, people like MailChimp. They write blogs on this stuff, so it's good to educate
in a
yourself.
previous lifetime, I worked briefly with a company called Phrasey, who their entire company is based around a kind of AI system for helping you write better lines, better
subject lines. Yeah, so be precious about what you're going to put in that. Don't just make it and then whatever was talked about before. Use the language that they had originally used to make their inquiry. And then a really important part of what do they call it, the real estate of emails, are the first couple of lines. These are the lines. This is, by the way, even before you open an email, the preview that you get. Again, when it's set to factory settings, you're going to get a couple of lines. It's probably about 100 characters, and it's the first two lines. So don't waste that with, as you pointed out, dear so-and-so, I hope you had a good weekend. Yada, yada, yada. Make those two lines count.
Yeah, I mean, the closest I get to that sort of positive affirmation nonsense is I go, hope all is well, and then I go straight into it.
Do you? I do put in the hope all is well, but I put it at the end of the email.
Yeah, but the thing by that, I'm trying to get them on a positive footing. I don't want to write in details. I'm so sorry for breaking into your day like this. I realize that you're really busy, and oh God's sake, get to the point. But no, I hope all is well. I wanted us to meet up to talk about X. Bang. You see, I'm
Okay,
already there.
so I go a bit more direct. I mean, I will go if the service that you're selling is, I don't know, delivering them the value of cost savings. I will put in that first line. Here are the details for getting 170 grand's worth of cost savings that we discussed,
Sure.
comma David. You know, I try and include their first name in that first couple of lines, so
No,
they
it's a good
know it's
idea. Personalization is the killer app these days. If you can make it so that people feel like they're valued, and the only way you can do that is if you're actually talking to them rather than some another robot. If you can make them feel valued, they're far more likely to latch into you as a source of useful information.
there you go. Now, you've got a limited amount of space before they have to then scroll. You know, we call that above the fold, everything that they can see there and then. And it's a great idea to put everything that they really need, the top level, the executive summary, if you like, but everything that they need in that bit before the fold. And above the fold needs to be your signature as well. And bearing in mind, this will be the reply to a whole previous set of signatures. It doesn't need all of your office number, your logo, all of your social proofing,
All the
blogs.
38 awards you won, any of
Yeah,
that.
and it definitely doesn't need the disclaimers, because there's a very important part of real estate on that above the fold part as well, besides the opening two lines. Because what happens, and we learn this through eyeball tracking with the Don't Make Me Think and all of that kind of stuff. When somebody opens your email, chances are they're going to read the first couple of lines, which they would have already seen in the preview bit, and then their eyes scoot down to the signature just to check who it's from. So what I try and get all my clients to do is to put something important around their signature, the PS. Yeah, so the signature for me is going to be David, followed with my telephone number on the same line, so I'm not wasting lines. PS, which I usually highlight in, you know, my corporate colors, but, you know, whatever, I usually highlight it because I want them to read that. And that PS might be a reminder of the call to action. You know, make sure you reply before the weekend because or it might be some added social proofing. When your competitor bought this stuff, here's what they said, you know, stuff like that. So those are the bits that people are really going to read. You know, even the second chunk of your email, what happens after the first two lines, they're probably only going to be scooting past. And then after that, if you've got an attachment, if you've got a whole load of other information that would be nice for them to read or look at, that's where to put your attached proposal or invoice or whatever. But that is how you structure an email if you want somebody to reply to it when you already have a relationship with them. I mean, I dare say the same is true for marketing emails, but that's not my area
Well,
of
do you
expertise.
know what? I would say you can extend that through. I know it's going to feel like it's a stretch. You can extend that through to when you're writing responses to LinkedIn messages. And now there are two sides of these. One is the direct message, and the other one, which is the message in full view. So so you've got to, if you're doing it in full view of everyone. So this is where you're part of the group responding to it, and you want them to take, or anybody else to take any notice. Remember, dialogue. The best place to create dialogue often is in response to somebody else's post. Is that you get to your point quickly. You don't spend a lot of time saying, "Oh, it's so wonderful the way you've written," and I'm bowled over by your attention. Bore me off. Instead, what you need to say is, "This is great. The reason it's great is this. I think I want to engage with you about this. Can you answer me this question?" So immediately you've
Yeah,
got
you can even go straight into
dynamism in there.
the headline. I mean, if you look at, you know, a well-produced magazine or newspaper, you know, they're going to hit you up first with the headline, knowing that that's the bit that's going to make you read the first paragraph. Make sure your first paragraph
Well,
hits the
it's
mark.
also going to set up expectations that that's exactly what they're going to be hitting within that first paragraph. They're somehow going to reference it. And if you're doing a DM message, remember, if they're going to take the time to bother to respond to this, they need to be hooked into it in some way. So if you must say, yeah, it was a great message, cool. Then get out the way and say what your interest is.
Mm.
I'm really interested in learning more about how you do X, Y, and Z, so that they've got something to chew on. If you spend all your time just trying to butter them up, they'll mostly disregard it. Whereas if you go from the point of view of I've read that and now I want to take some level of action, far more likely to respond. So I know I've extended outside the means of email.
You love doing it. But yeah, look, this is it's valid for all communications, all written communications. But I see this particularly where people are trying to develop a sales opportunity, a qualified opportunity, and trying to close deals. And they get very disappointed that people aren't responding to their emails, that they're having to send chaser emails all the time.
Yeah.
And really, we're trying to make incremental improvements here to increase your overall performance. If you do all of the things that we ever mention in these videos, then chances are you'll be making some massive gains. Each one by itself will help you just a little bit, but it can be those incremental improvements, those incremental improvements that close those deals for you.
But also, please remember this one truism, which is that you've no idea what's happening in the minds or the lives of the people that you're writing to. So just because they don't react in the way you'd expect them to react, they shouldn't in any way change how you view them. I would say, and I think this is a golden rule for life, which is try not to judge other people by your own standards. Because you'll just set it. So what you've got to do is think, I've responded to the content that was presented to me in the most authentic way that I can, and now I leave it to them, and how they deal with it up to them. You can't badger them into a response. You can't push them into a response. They need to respond in their own way. So always be authentic, but just deal with the information as provided. Don't imagine that they are hell-bent on doing everything they can to respond to you. That's probably not in their life right now. They've probably got a whole bunch of other stuff taking their focus. Give them the space to respond. So you need to give them a couple of days or whatever, and not get overwrought that they haven't.
A couple of days. Ooh, at the outside, I would say.
Yeah, but you've got to understand that people have different agendas.
I know.
Especially if it's come to the end of a month with their sales.
Maybe that should be a topic that we address at some point. What is the optimum amount of time to wait before you start sending those?
But some of my most interesting and potentially some of my not the most monetary engaging deals, but some of them came weeks later when they came back from the holiday I had no idea they'd scheduled, or they were on a sabbatical in one case, and they came back and they said, I'm just working through everything. I see this. What can we do to engage? And it's like, whoa, I thought I'd given this up for dead.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, guys, it's been absolutely fantastic talking yet again with the man himself. What I would say is, remember, each week we do come across a bunch of topics, some of which you may find absolutely resonate. So try and be there. We're here pretty much every Wednesday, or somewhere around 10 to 10:30, around that sort of time.
Pretty much every Wednesday. I think we've missed it once.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, guys. I wish you all well. Remember, if you plant your feet on the ground, you should still reach for the stars. Look at it, freaking out there with his iOS-based device. Remember, try and also maintain great mental health. Bye-bye now.
Ciao, ciao.